The scariest thing about Euphoria Season 3 right now isn't the violence, the drugs, or even the secrets that everybody is hiding. It's the fact that almost every single character believes they're still in control when in reality their lives are beginning to completely spiral out of control without them even realizing it. Episode 5 looks like it's going to be the moment where all of the lies, betrayals, and dangerous decisions finally begin catching up to everybody. Rue is now stuck between prison and death. Nate is watching his entire life collapse around him. Cassie is stepping deeper into an industry that looks glamorous on the outside, but feels terrifying underneath it all. And Jules might be on the verge of losing the only stable thing that she currently has left. But the biggest thing about this trailer is the feeling that nobody is safe anymore. Every scene felt tense, uncomfortable, and unpredictable. And it honestly looks like this next episode is going to push the season into an even darker direction than before. So with that being said, I wanted to break down the trailer for Euphoria Season 3 Episode 5, and also share my theories and predictions on what I think is really going to happen next, because there are a lot of small details hidden throughout this trailer that could reveal where these characters are heading by the end of the season. And just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The trailer for Episode 5 opened up with Rue looking completely uneasy while standing in front of Bishop. And instantly the atmosphere felt intimidating. One thing that Euphoria has done really well this season is making even normal conversations feel threatening. And this scene was a perfect example of that. Bishop was calm, emotionless, and controlled, but somehow that made him even more terrifying because it feels like he's the type of person that doesn't need to shout in order to scare people. He simply talks in a quiet voice while making it clear that he could destroy somebody's life within seconds if he wanted to. He told Rue that ever since she arrived there, everything has become chaos, and honestly, I think this moment was much bigger than it first appeared. It almost felt like Bishop already suspects Rue of being connected to everything that's gone wrong, but he's choosing not to directly expose her yet. That's what made the scene feel so tense because Rue herself looked like she was trying to stay calm while internally panicking. The way she avoided eye contact and looked frozen during the conversation made it feel like she knows she's getting closer and closer to being discovered. And the thing that really stood out to me was the fact that while Bishop was speaking, there was somebody tied up in the background ready to be tortured. That visual alone completely changed the mood of the trailer, because it reminded us how dangerous these people actually are. Up until this point, Rue has been trying to survive by balancing both sides, helping the DEA while also pretending to stay loyal to Alamo's crew, but this trailer made it feel like that balancing act is finally beginning to fall apart. Seeing somebody from their own operation getting punished despite not even being directly responsible showed that Alamo's organization is now running completely on paranoia and fear. Nobody trusts anybody anymore, and that creates an extremely dangerous environment for Rue, because if innocent people are getting tortured, then what will happen when they truly start suspecting her? Another thing that stood out during this opening sequence was the music, because it had this cold and unsettling energy to it that almost made the scene feel like a psychological thriller rather than a teen drama. This season has slowly transformed Euphoria into something much darker and more intense, and I think Episode 5 is going to fully embrace that darker tone. Bishop even mentioned that there was something about Rue that gave him a bad feeling, and honestly, that line felt incredibly important, because characters like Bishop usually trust instinct over evidence. He seems like the kind of person that notices behavior patterns and emotional reactions more than actual proof. So even if Rue hasn't technically been exposed yet, I think Bishop's instincts are already telling him that something isn't right. The problem for Rue is that once somebody like him starts watching you closely, every small mistake becomes dangerous. And considering how stressed and emotionally unstable Rue has looked recently, it feels inevitable that she's eventually going to crack under the pressure. The trailer also showed Rue meeting with the DEA again, where she was told that this could be her final chance. That line alone tells us how serious her situation has become, because the DEA clearly feels like she's either failing the operation or becoming too compromised to continue. But at the same time, Rue doesn't really have another option anymore. If she walks away, she could end up facing decades in prison. But if she continues helping them, she risks getting killed by Alamo's people if they discover the truth. That's why I think Rue's storyline right now is probably the most suspenseful part of the season, because every decision she makes feels dangerous no matter what direction she chooses. There's no safe path left for her anymore. At the same time that Rue's world is becoming darker and more violent, Cassie's storyline appears to be heading into a completely different kind of danger. The trailer showed Maddie packaging clothes, preparing orders, and basically running the business side of Cassie's growing online success, while Cassie herself seemed completely absorbed in the attention that she's receiving. We saw her celebrating hitting 50,000 subscribers and recording videos where she said she'd do anything for her fans, and honestly, that line felt extremely worrying because Euphoria usually uses dialogue like that as foreshadowing. It feels like Cassie is slowly losing her understanding of boundaries. She's becoming addicted to validation, attention, and the lifestyle that comes with it, and the more successful she becomes, the more vulnerable she might actually be underneath everything. What makes this storyline interesting is the contrast between appearance and reality. On the surface, Cassie's life looks glamorous and exciting. She's gaining followers, making money, and entering a world that seems filled with luxury and opportunity. But underneath all of that, the trailer kept hinting that something feels deeply uncomfortable about the direction she's heading in. Brandon asking her why she doesn't just move in with him felt like a major turning point, because it suggests that Cassie is becoming fully absorbed into his world now. And I honestly think that's where things are going to start becoming dangerous for her. Up until now, Maddie has almost acted like a shield for Cassie in some ways. She's helped guide her, protect her, and manage situations around her. But if Cassie starts distancing herself from Maddie because of fame, money, or pressure from Brandon's side, then she could end up isolated around people who don't genuinely care about her as a person. What made the trailer even more emotional was the moment where Cassie told Maddie that it wasn't personal. It was just business. That line honestly felt cold because after everything Maddie has done for her, it seems like Cassie is now prioritizing success over loyalty. But at the same time, I don't think Cassie fully realizes how dangerous this new environment actually is yet. She looks hypnotized by the attention and opportunities being thrown at her. And that's why I think episode 5 is going to start revealing the darker side of the industry she's entering. There was also that extremely strange shot where Cassie whispered that she was disappointed into what looked like some kind of recording setup, and the scene felt eerie and unsettling. It almost felt like she was slowly being transformed into somebody else entirely. Euphoria has always explored identity and emotional emptiness, and I think Cassie's story this season is showing how fame and validation can completely consume somebody until they stop recognizing themselves. And the really tragic part is that while Cassie's life appears to be improving financially, almost every emotional connection around her seems to be breaking apart at the same time. One of the most interesting things about this trailer was how it constantly switched between characters who look successful on the outside while secretly falling apart internally. And honestly, nobody represents that more than Jules right now. Her storyline in episode 5 already feels incredibly sad because even though she technically has stability compared to some of the other characters, she also feels emotionally empty. The trailer showed her sitting alone inside the apartment that she's being paid to stay in while pouring herself wine and looking frustrated. And it instantly gave the impression that she's beginning to feel trapped in her own life. Earlier in the season, Jules gave up on art school and her creative ambitions because easy money and comfort seemed more appealing. But now it feels like she's starting to realize that comfort without purpose can become its own kind of prison. One thing that Euphoria has always done well is showing characters chasing something that they believe will fix their lives only to discover that it leaves them feeling even more hollow than before. And with Jules, I think that's exactly what's happening now. She has the apartment, the money and the freedom, but emotionally she seems more disconnected than ever. The previous episode already hinted at this when she was spending her days sitting around doing nothing, and the trailer for episode 5 made it feel like that frustration is beginning to boil over. The moment that stood out the most was when Jules said, "You want me? Then make me yours." That line honestly felt desperate more than romantic. It sounded like somebody craving attention, validation, and emotional attachment because they no longer know who they are without it. And I think the reason that scene feels so important is because it shows Jules entering a dangerous emotional state, where she could start making reckless decisions simply because she wants to feel wanted again. The trailer also showed the owner of the apartment confronting her after apparently discovering that she had brought somebody else there. And instantly you could feel the tension in the scene. It gave the impression that Jules is now putting the one stable thing in her life at risk because she's bored, restless, and emotionally lost. What makes this storyline tragic is the feeling that Jules is slowly realizing she abandoned the very thing that gave her life meaning. Art was one of the only things that allowed her to express herself honestly, but now that she's disconnected from it, she seems emotionally numb. So when she finally tried reconnecting with creativity through the artwork we saw earlier in the season, and then received criticism for it, it probably crushed her more deeply than people realize. I honestly think episode 5 is going to show Jules spiraling further because she no longer feels fulfilled by the lifestyle she chose, but at the same time, she may feel like it's too late to go back. At the same time, Nate's storyline in this trailer felt completely chaotic and honestly terrifying because for the first time in a long time, it genuinely looks like he's losing control over his life. The trailer showed him sitting inside a house surrounded by empty alcohol bottles and trash everywhere. And visually it looked like the environment itself was reflecting his mental state. Nate has always tried to present himself as somebody strong, confident, and in control, but this season has slowly stripped that image away piece by piece. Everything around him now feels unstable. He owes a massive amount of money. Dangerous people are hunting him down. His relationship with Cassie seems to be collapsing, and mentally he looks exhausted. The voice message where he told Cassie that he was counting on her honestly revealed more vulnerability than we usually see from him. It sounded like somebody desperate for support because they no longer know how to fix their situation alone. And the interesting thing about that moment is how it completely reversed the dynamic between them. Earlier in the season, Cassie was the one relying on Nate emotionally and financially. But now it feels like Nate may be depending on her instead while she becomes more focused on her own rising success. That's what makes their relationship so unstable right now, because they're both heading in completely different emotional directions. Cassie is becoming consumed by attention and opportunity, while Nate is sinking deeper into fear, debt, and isolation. And honestly, it feels inevitable that their worlds are going to clash in a destructive way. The trailer even showed Nate running upstairs while one of Naz's men appeared to be chasing him. And the tension during that sequence felt intense. It seems like despite all of Nate's attempts to hide or avoid the situation, the people he owes money to are still tracking him down. What's scary about this storyline is that Nate's enemies don't seem interested in negotiating anymore. They want control, fear, and punishment. And the trailer strongly hinted that Nate could end up being violently attacked again. The problem for him now is that he's running out of options. He doesn't have the power or influence that he once relied on. And as his life continues falling apart, he's becoming increasingly desperate. And desperate people in Euphoria usually make extremely dangerous decisions. Another moment that really caught my attention was Lexi standing with her boss, while something shocking appeared on a screen in front of them. We never actually saw what they were looking at, but the reaction alone felt important. Lexi's boss saying, "That's your sister?" immediately made me think that Cassie's growing online fame is going to start affecting Lexi's life in a negative way. One thing that Euphoria constantly explores is how the actions of one character create consequences for everybody around them. And Lexi often ends up suffering because of the chaos created by others. That's why I think episode 5 could become emotionally difficult for her because while Cassie sees fame as freedom, Lexi may begin experiencing embarrassment, pressure, or judgment because of it. The contrast between the sisters is becoming more and more obvious this season. Cassie desperately wants validation from strangers while Lexi seems to crave genuine emotional connection and stability. But unfortunately for Lexi, she keeps getting dragged into situations she never asked to be part of. And considering how uncomfortable and uneasy the trailer made her look, I think she's going to become increasingly frustrated with Cassie's decisions moving forward. One thing that really stood out throughout the entire trailer was the overwhelming feeling that every character is approaching a breaking point at the exact same time. Nobody looked calm, safe, or emotionally stable. Every scene carried tension underneath it. And even moments that should have looked glamorous or exciting still felt dark and unsettling. That's why I think episode 5 is probably going to be the turning point of the season where the consequences finally become unavoidable. Up until now, many of the characters have still been chasing illusions. Rue believed she could survive between two dangerous worlds. Cassie believed fame and attention would make her feel loved. Jules believed comfort could replace passion, and Nate believed he could escape the consequences of his actions. But this trailer felt like the show finally revealing that those illusions are beginning to collapse. And once those illusions disappear, the characters are going to be forced to face the reality of who they've become, and the damage they've caused both to themselves and to the people around them.